Hey everybody, this is Max here. I hope you're having a great day today. Today I'm going to be going over a UX research repository framework in Airtable and what that looks like. I get a lot of questions that I see come up around teams that are looking to create a repository, what it should look like, what tools they should use. So this is how I've set it up in Airtable for my team and how I've used it at several different companies in the past. It's mostly a template and a framework. Obviously, every team is different, so it may look different depending on your processes and your needs of your team. Um, but nonetheless, hopefully this will give you a structure that you can work off of to get started with a repository for your team to track projects, to track insights, tools, team members, stakeholders, etc. You can use this tool for basically everything that you need. And I'll go into Airtable for those of you who are maybe a little bit unfamiliar, but Airtable is a great tool. I recommend it because it's free up to, so they track it based on your storage and how much you use. But they track it per base. So you have up to 2 gigabytes per base and up to 1,200 records per base. And so unless you're doing, over 1,200 studies a year, it's a great tool to get you started. And then, of course, after using it for a year, seeing how it works, you can always look to upgrade to the pro version as needed. But I highly recommend it. I'll kind of go through the structure here. So what we're looking at when you create an account is you'll see what are called workspaces, and this is where I've got the UX Research workspace. And you can create multiple different what are called bases, which are basically these little tiles here. And each of these is a different, I'll go into in a sec, but basically a database of information. And it's basically like a glorified Excel document. What's great is you can create lots of different types of views and manipulate the information in whatever way is most convenient for you and easy to digest. You can share these things with your team, with stakeholders, and you can create view only access for stakeholders that may not want to create an account but just consume the information, such as product managers, etc. And so without further ado, I can hop right in. A couple other things to quickly point out is they do have a lot of templates that are great, that if you want to explore other ways in which you can use Airtable for your company, you can look at that. And they also have a lot of great integrations and APIs that you can look at as well. So let's dive into the UX Research repository and how I've set that up. So as it loads up here, you'll see, obviously this is all mock data for an e-commerce website, just to kind of give you guys an understanding of what it might look like. So we've got different tabs here at the top. We've got projects, keywords, so you can basically search for projects or insights based upon keywords or tags. Insight Tracker, which I'll probably get to in a different video. It's a great tool that basically allows you to track insights across studies and the progress of the implementation of those insights. So let's say you run a study, you've got some insights, and typically most teams will deliver their report and then never follow up and figure out whatever happened and how their insights were implemented. This is a great tool for that. So definitely stay tuned and look out for a video when I cover that. I also like to track tools, different stakeholders or teams. I also use Airtable for my note-taking, particularly around moderated studies. Usability is the easiest one, but you can also do it for just in-depth interviews and so forth as well. And I'll do another video on that as well. And then task list, if depending on how specific you want to get with your team in terms of what they need to get done. But we're just going to be focusing on projects and keywords for this one. Again, you can share this with your team. You can add extensions. There's also automations that you can create. So if somebody submits a research request form, which I can show you how to do, you can get notified of that right away. You can have it send to whatever researchers that maybe that form is relevant to, or that request is relevant to. You can also create interfaces, which are basically analytic dashboards. So what's great about this is you can actually go through and say, all right, like how many participants did we recruit this past year in our studies? How many projects did everyone on the team complete over the past year? You can see how many insights were implemented over the past year versus which ones are still pending. If you're tracking the severity of those insights, you can track everything from high risks that are still out there that, maybe critical issues that have not been resolved from research that are still lingering and how long those have been lingering with the company. And so you can surface those and address those more urgent risks to the team. So there's a lot of really cool things as you integrate all this together. But again, going back to the repository, as you'll see here, we've got project in the far left column here with a list of basically every project name underneath it. So let's say you've got one for your product list page, one for cart, you have a project on checkout, you have another one on edit order, all sorts of different things. And then what I like to do is also just document the objectives, or at least a description at the minimum of what the study is about. So you can add a short description here. Let's say this looks a little congested here. You can actually adjust the row height, which is helpful, especially when you're taking notes and things. So you can expand it to see a little bit more info. I always tag who the lead researcher is for point of contact purposes, and also just tracking, how much work different team members have on their capacity. Tagging other stakeholders, which you'll see there's different field types, and I can get into this later, but this one is a linked record. So this is actually linking to this teams table. So basically everyone in here is linked to another table where it then describes, well, who is this CAM D person? Are they a product owner? What products do they own? What's their email? You can track everything about the different stakeholders as needed. And then I always track the status. Is it in the backlog, in progress, complete? You can also get more detailed with this if you're interested in providing detail around, is it, in the test planning stage? Is it in data collection? Is it in report, documentation phase, etc. So you can get as specific as you need with your team. And then I also always like to track keywords, and I'll get to that table in a second. But what you'll notice with a lot of products and projects is that, for example, checkout, you'll have a lot of sub kind of products within checkout, such as progress tracker or order summary. And these are things that might pop up across the entire digital experience. Let's say you've got a progress tracker in checkout, but you also have one in account creation flow. And so you might have insights that are relevant to the progress tracker in both projects. And by tagging the keywords, you can actually look up those insights across those projects and across those products. So it also helps just for if somebody has a question later down the road and they're looking at progress trackers specifically, they can see all the different projects and previous research done on progress trackers or that touched on progress trackers. I also like to track the timeline. More recently, working in Safe Agile, so we use PIs. You can track specific start dates and end dates if you so choose. I like to keep it a little bit more general. It's easier for people to keep track of, especially when there's lots of delays and blockers and different things. Or start dates and end dates can be a little vague for researchers. So I try to keep it a little bit more general in terms of when was the project or work planned and carried out. So also go through, and you can track as little or as much information as you want. But I like to also track the method. Was it a usability study? Was it a diary study? Sometimes if it's like mixed methods, you can include both. If there's a survey in there. And then also the tools. So what tools were you using? And this helps you track at the end of the year, what tools are being utilized the most, what methods are they being used for, That way you can kind of sunset different tools that aren't being utilized fully. So highly recommend tracking tools. And then adding number of participants. So this is important if you're tracking cost, especially for tools like UserZoom, where they actually give, depending on your contract, maybe unlimited recruits with your subscription, as long as it meets a certain threshold, which is pretty common. And so you might not need a number of participants, but it's still good to measure that so you can know how much you would be spending if you move to a different tool, right? So tracking number of participants. It's also a fun metric, at the end of the year being like, cool, we've talked to, 4,000 customers or 4,000 users in our studies, right? So, and 4,000 is actually probably a low number. Once you start tracking it, you realize just how many people you actually talk to. And this is where we track the insights. So when you have a study and you've got your findings, key findings, and recommendations, you can add those insights into here. And we've got a different table for that, which these are linked to. What's cool about this is you can go and check out, okay, here's the checkout study that we've got, and here are all the insights that we got from it. Again, this is all dummy data, but you can click into here and see all the different insights that came out of it, the severity of those insights. If you want to click on it, you can get all the additional details around the status of that insight and the implementation and so forth. All right, and then we also always include a report link. This, again, to limit the amount of space you're using up on your Airtable, because it is limited on the free version. I always recommend just linking. Typically, most companies have like a SharePoint or something. Save your reports and all of that to that SharePoint or whatever cloud storage you have, and just add the share link here. That keeps it a little bit more secure. And it also cuts down on the storage that you're using, especially when you have hundreds of reports in here with all your studies. You can also add additional resources if you've got pitch decks, if you've got Figma files or prototype files of any sort. You can add other additional links as needed. So I recommend, as you create a repository, try to trim this down as much as possible for researchers to complete this. It doesn't take a lot of time, but when they see 100 different fields, which I've worked at a place where they had a similar setup, but they had 100 different things that they were tracking, no one ever filled it out because it was overwhelming. They didn't know what to fill out, what was actually critical, and they always missed things because there's just too many data points that they needed to track. And so I recommend trying to keep it as slim as possible. Just track what you know is going to be important and the things that you need to keep track of for the end of the year and on a daily operational basis. So this obviously, if you've got a lot of studies in here, it can get a little overwhelming. And so this is where the filtering, hiding different fields, grouping, and sorting come in really handy. And you can actually save these. So if, let's say, I'm coming in, I just want to see projects that are related to me, right? Like I don't want to see everyone else's projects. I just need to see what's relevant to me. Well, what we can do is actually over here on the left, you'll see all the different views that I've created and saved. So you can actually come over here and say, hey, I've got one for just Max's projects. And basically what I did is I created a view that was filtered by the lead researcher and included just me, right? So this is all of just my projects, and I can see that I've got a couple in progress, a couple completed. Let's say I just want to focus also on what should I be focused on, right? So maybe I want to sort this by the status. And that way I see, okay, well, we've got my backlog items at the top, in progress right below that, and then the completed projects at the very bottom. You can also, which is sometimes nice, is if I didn't want those to all show up in a line, you can also group it. So let's say, hey, I just want to group it by status instead. Now you can see all the projects in the backlog. Let's say maybe that's not as relevant to me. Right now I just want to see what's in progress. You can collapse it as well as the completed ones. And let's say I actually want in progress at the very top. I don't want the backlog to take up so much space at the top. So what we can actually do there is if we go over to the status column, I'll click on this and I'll customize it. And you'll see the different options that I've put in here. You can add more options as needed. But it's basically in a hierarchy right here. Let's say I want to see in progress at the top. And I can move that and save it. And now in progress projects are at the very top. So it's really nice. I'll undo it for now just to fix it here. Great. And then sometimes people don't like this view because it's just, again, it's a table. They don't work well with Excel documents. So maybe you work better in a Kanban view. So let me open that up. And this is what it would look like, right? So we've got, if it doesn't have a status, it'll be uncategorized, but you can collapse that. Anything on hold, I've collapsed that as well because it's not as relevant. But I've got everything in the backlog here on the left, and then all my in progress projects here, and then completed projects on the far right. Let's say I also don't really care about completed projects. I can collapse that. If I have a new status or something, I can add that information. As you'll see, we've got the project name, the lead researcher, and the objectives listed. You can actually customize what information is shown within these cards. So if you come in here and customize, you can actually turn on and off all of that information. So let's say I also want to see, when the work timeline is, and then maybe let's see stakeholders as well. I need to know who the contact people are. So you can see all of that information if you turn it on or off. Typically, I just like to keep it short and simple with just the name, the status, and the researcher. What's nice is as you go through your stand-ups and chat through, hey, I just want to go through with the team, what is so-and-so working on, you can actually just filter and go through one at a time if you want. So you can say filter out, researchers that include whomever. You can just filter, hey, I just want to work on, okay, what's Max working on? Give me your updates. And I can get all that information here. So, and then if I want to dive into more details, I can click on that card and expands here. And if I click on expand the hidden fields, it gives me all the additional details. So when was the work started on? Is it finished yet? Here's a bunch of tasks, right? If you're tracking tasks, like, hey, we still need to, have the kickoff meeting, the test plan, data collection, all of that still pending. So those are the tasks that still need to be completed. All the different methods, participants, all that stuff. If you want to take a note, you can also create another field or put it in the objectives, any notes that you have, or leave a comment. So let's say someone on your team's not there today and you want to have them follow up, you can leave a comment and say, what's the status? Right? And you can leave that to them. They'll be pinged when they get that if they're tagged in it, and they can reply back to you on those projects. So it's a really great tool for a lot of different reasons. You can save different views. You can also create what I mentioned earlier, a research request form, which will auto-populate into your backlog of projects. Hold on, here we go. So, if you want to have someone submit a request, they can put in the project name, their name, the stakeholder. And what's nice is you can change the text here of what it will say, so your name as the person filling out the form. But you'll see here, it actually is tagged to the stakeholders column. So even though they're putting in their name, it will be put into the stakeholders data point. So it's a really great tool, very easy to use. You can set this up however you want. You can also have it ping you, your email when someone submits the form. You can remove any fields that are irrelevant. And then when you're ready to share the form, basically you click here, you get the link. And let me open this up just so you can see what it looks like. And here's the form that somebody would fill out. So obviously this is a free version, so it will be tagged with Airtable, but if you get the pro version, you can customize it, add your own branding and so forth. But it's great. There's a lot you can do with the free version. A lot of different ways you can manipulate the data. Let me go back. I also forgot to mention the keywords. So what's ultimately great about this is it makes it very simple and easy for people to be able to find projects relevant to them quickly and easily. So if you, let's say you go into keywords, which is something that we were tagging in our projects, I've alphabetized it. I've sorted it by alphabetical order. So you'll see all the different keywords and tags that people have put into their studies. You'll see here we've got every keyword is tagged with a project. So you'll see order summary. We've got 3 different studies or projects that we've done that have touched on the order summary, edit order, checkout, and cart. So you can actually click into any of those studies, get all the full details about each of those studies, or again, as I mentioned earlier, we've got insights across the studies. So this is actually pulling all of the insights from all 3 of these studies on order summary. So what we can do is expand this and get all of the insights relevant to these studies, which is touched on order summary. So you can track, roll-ups. So if, you can say how many projects were relevant to this keyword, etc. And then let me quickly go through. I'll show you tools as well. So again, this is linking to tools. So every tool that you track, it will say user zoom, all the different studies that utilize user zoom, how many studies utilized it. If you've got a point of contact and a link, you can add that information. And again, this is tied ultimately to this other table called teams or stakeholders, if you want to call it something else. And this you can split up by department. So this one's grouped by department, so you can see all the people that work in IT. You can see their role, their email information, the studies that they've been tagged as stakeholders on, and the tools maybe that they own or are a point of contact for. So again, all of this is linked together, and I'll go through how to actually create this in maybe another video, but you can kind of see what you can do with it. So that's just a good overview of how I've used Airtable for UX Research Repository. I think it's a good foundation. Of course, you guys can adapt it to your needs for your team and your processes, but I hope this was helpful. If you've got questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be happy to do a follow-up video to address any topics or areas of interest for other researchers out there.